Okay, I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Charter Revision Commission for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you all had good holidays. Restful, joyful, no stress, no worry. Okay, may I have the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Brown.
Yes.
Cochran.
Here.
Hoganson. Schneider. Metz.
Here.
Neal.
Present.
Poholka.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
For the agenda, we have Heather Bowman here this evening, who is the Director of Public Works for the City of Big Rapids. And since she has been very gracious in giving us some of her time this evening, I would like to move her up before old business. So we're just going to get a little bit of quick business done, and then we will.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. Other than that, it is approved. And I need approval of the minutes from December 11th. Do I hear a motion?
I motion.
Second?
Second.
Do I hear any additions, corrections, deletions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And minutes are approved. Mrs. Manosky, were there any communications?
No. Nobody didn't get it.
Okay. For committee reports, I wanted to just maybe get a brief update. I did notice on the survey that the QR code is up on the city Facebook page. And is there anything else that you have? No movement at this point. I put a notification on my Facebook page, and I asked people if they're okay to do that, please share it. Directing them to the website and the QR code. So I appreciate we're still coming out of the holidays, so this may take a little time getting going, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Okay, that takes care of item number 6. So we are going to move to new business, and we kind of cornered Heather here to ask, give us some clarification on a few items. So do you have the information for you?
I do have the sections that were all the action.
Go for it.
I guess I'm looking for a little opportunity for some Q&A, but I see the first item is section 8.10, referencing the city purchasing process. And I see some redlined items in addition in the second paragraph. And just was wondering what it is that you were looking for feedback on from me in that capacity.
What we came up with, does that work for you?
The dollar amount that's listed is reflective to the also the change orders. And I had the opportunity to speak to the other department heads, and I can give you examples as to why this dollar amount is going to be requested to be increased. So let me go through those examples, and then if you have any questions in the interim, feel free to stop me. I don't want to just spew a whole bunch of information at you at one time, but just briefly over the course of these last few days, I had communications with Fire Chief Steve Schroeder, and his comment was currently when they have to do maintenance on the fire engines, in particular the head gaskets, the ladder truck, they have to have particular warranty paid that's applied to the fire trucks to make sure that they don't rust. Doing that type of activity, they have gone over the $7,500 mark just for the materials itself. And so what we've done in a fashion to get us by without having to delay going to the commission, all departments have done this in some capacity here or there, we will often ask the said contractor that we believe is qualified to send us an invoice for just materials. and then send an invoice for the labor. So that way it's not one large invoice. We do a proactive approach in finding quotes if need be, so that way we can verify that we've done due diligence, but that in itself for the fire department, they can't fix or maintain one fire vehicle with all of the maintenance in one time because of this dollar. So the 12.5 would be still a problem for that particular example.
What number would work there?
I'll get you a number at the end of my talking.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna jump in. So.
Save the worst for
then-
last.
Another thing he wanted to call out was record management system is basically what they need on hand 24 hours a day in the event that a fire call does come in. And currently, as it stands, if they were to replace that equipment, it's over $14,000. And so, as that fits right now, it doesn't suit our RFQ and RFP process, which is our procurement process that we have to follow when we're doing purchasing. And because it will delay them a substantial amount of time, which is a necessary piece of equipment. So therefore, it would have to go into an emergency purchase. What we found over time and just, this type of situation as well as in projects, if we have a purchase order or anything that we have to do over the $7,500, because of our purchasing policy, we are required to go out to bid or with an RFQ at no minimum of 10 days. That's not 10 business days, it's 10 days. And then we have to take into consideration the commission when they meet, and then we also have to take into consideration when the bid opening or RFQ process takes place, because we have to meet the city clerk's deadline to send the packets to the commission. So you're talking anywhere between actively in a bid, 3-week window if you're cutting it short. If you're doing an RFQ, you typically want to do, or RFP, you want to do interviews with said contractors and do reference checks, which adds additional time to it. So then you're looking at that process to take usually about a month, month and a half. So that's the challenge in itself with that dollar amount for this particular project. I had the opportunity to talk to April and Steve Schroeder specifically about the Axon body cams and in-car cameras. We recently just approved, or the commission just approved, moving forward with Axon body cams and in-car cameras because, one, they're in Michigan, so the product will be readily available to switch out. It's high quality. You'll see, cops or whatever, TikTok or something like that, they'll have Axon on it. This is just the high quality camera that everyone is using in law enforcement. So we move forward with that, and we currently have 2 years left of their warranty. To give you perspective, to initiate changing out all of our gear, the commission approved a project that was just shy of $300,000. So roughly we pay about $60,000 annually to get us up to par for these 3 years of warranty. Now, after 3 years, clearly the warranty doesn't apply, and we all know technology probably doesn't last longer than 3 years. So we're anticipating that there are going to be things that are going to have to get repaired or switched out. And we're not going to switch companies. You're going to stay with Axon because that's what they found to be the best performer. So with that being said, if you were to replace 2 body cameras and an in-car camera, you're going to be over the $12,500. I don't know the exact dollar, but usually if you buy everything at one time, more than one thing breaks at one time, technology based. So that being said, I also had the opportunity to talk to them about their 800 meg radios. Total between police and fire, they have 57 of them. So in the event, if there were 3 or 4 of them that go down, they have to be replaced. They have to make sure that they're all active and ready to go, so, because they have to be on the charger. They're in an emergency. They don't have the time to check to see if they're working or if they're charged or whatever's happening. be able to grab one, run out of the facility, and do what their duty is. If 3 or 4 of them go down, they're approximately $8,000 a piece. So again, we're over the 12.5. So then we're kind of in this pickle because we know that one radio is over $8,000, which already meets our threshold, what's currently in the charter, which is $7,500. So let's hope that doesn't happen, but I'm just giving you the numbers.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
how have they handled that in the past, given that the current cap is, say, below the cost of some of these?
They probably did an emergency purchase. I don't know that for sure because it's not my department, but that's probably what they ended up doing. Water, wastewater. So we have what's called VFDs. They're variable frequency devices.
Drives.
Variable frequency devices, sorry, VFDs. And so what these do is you have a huge engine that's gonna start up and you don't want it to just slam open and then slam shut. And so this device makes sure that these huge engines start up slowly and then shut down slowly. And it's critical for like the blower motors that we recently just had to do an emergency purchase for, 2 of them at the wastewater plant, because if those were not functioning properly, then the air doesn't go into the aeration bases. What the air does is makes the bugs happy, which we need the bugs to take care of the waste. That's part of the process. So recently, we had to do an emergency purchase for these 2 VFDs to go to the wastewater plant. There will be a follow-up at our next commission meeting because they have been installed, which is a requirement part of our emergency purchases by the city manager. But with that being said, we were delayed approximately 3 to 4 weeks to purchase these 2 VFDs that we knew that were on the shelves, and had it not been, if it had been under $7,500 and we could have purchased them, we would have done it. But we had to go through the formal process, and we were on pins and needles after we got the resolution because we were told the day before that they were on the shelf, but there was no guarantee the next day that they would be. And with given all the delays that are taking place with all of the materials that we're experiencing and projects, it's kind of a nail biter for us. It's one thing to hear that you have it there on the shelf, but then you don't know 3 weeks later if that's going to be the case. So we got fortunate, and they did hold them, and we got them replaced, and things are functioning again the way that they should be. But it was an unnecessary weight on staff's mind because it's a restriction that we're dealing with at this point. Heavy equipment. So let's say, for example, we're in snow plowing season right now, and if one of our plow trucks, a scraper underneath it, were to be in need of replacement because they hit a huge boulder, I don't know, whatever the scenario is. But if we had to replace the scraper, currently, we would have to send the truck down to Grand Rapids and have it get repaired by an international company or whomever has the scraper that can, in fact, put the apparatus on appropriately and safely, and then bring it back to us because we cannot buy a scraper. We would like to be able to save money and purchase a scraper and then grab it from Grand Rapids, bring it back. We have capable staff that can work on heavy equipment and put it back on, and we could have it up and running within, a couple of days. But then if you have to send a truck like that to Grand Rapids to get work done, again, another series of delays because you're not at the top of the list. So hopefully that hasn't happened, and it doesn't. But that's another scenario that we would have to keep in the back of our minds. Another piece of heavy equipment where we could save money if staff could have the opportunity to work on it, if they could just go and purchase the equipment, is a backhoe. Sometimes you'll see some of them have like the claw so they can go and grab things. If a claw were to break, we would have to, again, send the heavy equipment down to Grand Rapids and have them fix it because we don't have the purchasing ability to just purchase a claw. A claw right now can range, depending on the size, between $15,000 to $25,000. So,
Sorry, to clarify again.
Yeah.
So the only thing that is preventing these purchases from their perspective is the provision in the charter limiting the total purchase amount. It's not anything related to the larger budget or approval of that purchase amount.
correct. In terms of the budget, in the event that that particular item needed to be repaired and it wasn't particularly budgeted for that fiscal year, we would talk with the city treasurer and depending on what funds it would go to, if it was water funds, water replacement, sewer replacement, if it was Act 51 funds, which is road funding, or general fund, they would determine where we had enough cushion and where it was applicable. So, I mean, it's kind of voodoo bookkeeping in some respects, but I mean, you can kind of, depending on what that equipment will work on, you can use said funds to repair equipment. Now, you can't take water funds or sewer funds and put them towards police repairs because water and sewer are enterprises. So those funds have to be specifically allocated to water type activity or sewer type activity. The rest of it goes to, other than Act 51, which is road funding that comes from the state of Michigan, but the rest of it comes out of general fund. So next Tuesday, Tuesday the 21st, I see that you guys have your own resolution for a budget amendment for the Charter Revision Commission, $10,000. Another delay even on your end.
Yes.
Experience it all around.
As you mentioned it.
Yes. Another thing that will be on that same commission docket is an aeration flow meter. We have a proposal from Topline, who is a contractor, that we've been working with side by side on our SCADA and everything. They're a great company, very knowledgeable. An aeration flow meter that's located next to our grease grit at the wastewater plant. It broke earlier this week, and now staff have to manually monitor that flow, and we're on hold until we get, hopefully, approval from the city commission to purchase a new aeration flow meter. But that won't be until the 21st, and then we have to sign the proposal, and then, again, hopefully, the piece of equipment is on stock. Right now it is, but we have to wait and see if it's gonna be available after the 21st. So that's another scenario that would be. Couple years ago, the DDA was nice enough to get us, give the city the opportunity to use some of their funding to purchase or refurbish the two signs that say, "Welcome to Big Rapids," historical Big Rapids, and then it says Ferris State University. So the one at Northland Drive is near the airport, and then the other is on Perry Avenue near the church that's on the south side. And so we acknowledge that the flaking of the sign, it needs to be refurbished. I was able 2 years ago to get in contact with Dana, who he owned D&D Sign. He was the original fabricator. That day and time that I met him, he was ready to rip them out of the ground, because he had to, and take them to his shop in Traverse City. And I said, well, I gotta do an RFQ and all this other stuff, and I gotta jump through these hoops. Did all that. He retired and sold his business. I got a hold of the new business owners. They don't do that type of sign any longer. So for the last 2 years, we have been trying to identify what is an appropriate replacement sign, and we don't have the answer to that. We've been working with the DDA over the last 2 years. But had I had that purchasing ability to not have to go through the RFQ, he didn't tell me he was retiring, but had I had the opportunity to do it that day, I would have been like, take him. But, so that's been an ongoing project that we've been wrestling with. And unfortunately, as everything has increased in cost over time, we have identified that we're probably gonna have to go to the DDA for additional funding to get adequate signage that doesn't look like we've downgraded, if that makes sense. So we're working on that. Most recently, I received communications from the contractor that's working at the Depot Park. They're actively working on doing the park project in terms of, right now, they'd like to start doing the building of the pavilion structure, not the restroom portion, but the building structure. The materials have since been dropped off on site, and I received communications from them through staff that consumers needs to have an estimated cost paid for of $17,495.50 to give us a service drop for the restroom facility. And it's really peculiar to us because we've never been in this situation. If we do a service drop with consumers, past practice is that they don't charge us for a refundable agreement installation cost. Staff has changed on their ends, and we, being the city, not applying directly through consumers and going through the contractor, which we have to because it's in their contract that they have to manage that. They being the contractor, allocated $8,000 to manage and upfront the cost for the meter drop for consumers. So now we're short approximately over $9,000. Now we have to go to the commission on the 21st with a change order of a little over $9,000 to proceed with consumers to do a meter drop. I think you have the contract right here, and we should be able to get that signed off. The contractor got approved on October 7th of last year to proceed with the Depot Park project. By the time the contracts were signed, bonds were received, approvals were given by the state because we have a grant. That one didn't have to get approved, that's a RAP grant. But nevertheless, after we got all through the paperwork, they were ready to do the ordering by the end of October. So that leads me to believe, I didn't confirm this, but I would think that they had gotten a hold of consumers to start the process to get the meter drop. That was November, beginning of November, if I make the assumption correctly. I can't imagine that they would wait until mid-November with the holidays and everything coming into play. So now we just received communication now. So now I gotta go to the commission on the 21st for a change order, and then it's not as simple as them saying, oh, okay, you got the resolution. No, you delayed it. Now we're delayed yet another 2 months, which may delay the Depot Park project to be completed. Even though they're working proactively over the winter time, there's a high probability that their project may be delayed because they have underground wiring that's gonna go to the facility itself. So it goes overhead, drops down to the meter, and then it goes underground. And that is highly likely that it's going to get put into a different queue, and it'll delay the whole project probably by at least another couple months. It's frustrating because they just dropped off all the materials, and I don't know if they're going to be able to start building as early as next week because they're waiting for the underground service.
The underground service can be put in as long as they stub out of the building. They can put the underground service whenever.
Yeah.
I was an electrician for 30 years.
Yeah. So that's a delay that we're dealing with on that end. Couple more examples and then I'll stop talking about this and you guys can hit me with questions after I tell you what my requested amount from department heads is.
Give us fair warning so we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
brace
yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, 4 more examples. So recently, everyone, I hope, has had the opportunity to see, but we were able to install a restroom facility at North End Park. And reason why it was delayed for us to get the facility installed was because we had to have a well drilled. So we went out to bid for a well to be drilled for that facility after getting approvals from the health department. And nobody bid. We had quotes from well drillers, and they were all very interested in the job at the time that we had communications with them, which is early fall, and they had time available it was summertime. They had time available in early fall to install the well. We went out to bid, nobody bid on it. They knew it was there. We called them, we reminded them. Well drillers do not want to fill out the paperwork to do W-9s and all of that other stuff. They are in the job of showing up, dropping in a well, making the connection, getting paid, have the health department sign off on it, and go on to the next job. They're not interested in doing paperwork. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and then we found a well driller that was able to put us on their schedule for the end of fall. And we had to beg them to hold us a spot. We had to go to the commission and give them a thorough explanation of how we went out to bid. We didn't receive any bids. We have somebody that's willing to give us this job for $8,000. It was $500 too much for us based off of the charter for us to move forward. We almost lost the spot. We got the weld in, so we're good to go. But we were scrambling because he had to change his schedule so that we could get the well put in before the facility showed up. Rooftop units. The last time the rooftop unit in this facility was replaced was in 2015, 2016. And that was due to a lightning strike. And we had to put it on as an emergency purchase because of the cost. So we reached out, the facilities manager, Eric Haluska, and I, we reached out to an HVAC person that we use on a regular basis and asked him to give us a quote if that happened tomorrow. And he said, given the amount of tonnage and how we'd have to get a crane, he said, I would anticipate to quote you anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 for one unit. So that's today. 10 years from now, who knows? Inserta valves. So an inserta valve is quite exactly what it sounds like. You have a water main, and as you drive around town, you see these little circular things in the street that have a cover over it. Pop that cover off, and we have a device that goes down, and it allows you to turn the valve so you can shut the water off, and you can segregate portions of the water main so that you can do repairs if there's a crack. Last summer, we had a water main break that took place behind Shooters in the alley. We identified that we had a number of valves that were broken, and so we had to shut down the water main from the library to Maple Street. Rather than segregating from Elm to Maple Street, we had to add additional blocks. We couldn't go past the library because that is a 12-inch line that goes to the State Street water main. So we currently have inserta valve bid that's out on the street for 2 inserta valves. We are hoping to get those back in here in the next few weeks, and then again we'll go to the commission, and we anticipate that we'll get a bid for probably $30,000 because one inserta valve is anywhere between $13,000 to $15,000. So we know that there are a number of valves, particularly over by Rose and Marion, that need to be replaced. But again, we can't do that without going out to bid. And so we end up into a particular situation where just recently there was a water service line that was leaking and needed to be addressed. I believe it was over on Bellevue. Don't quote me on the location though. And we identified that there were a number of valves that wouldn't turn or were broken. Thankfully they were broken open, but then we had to segregate several blocks that were unnecessary to shut down, which required a water boil notice to people that it didn't even really need to affect. So that's a maintenance thing that kind of delays us in making the necessary repairs when found. And then last but not least, I just wanted to give you a perspective as to, I reached out to our neighbor, the Housing Commission, so that you could understand what their purchasing policies were in terms of their limits. And Linda was kind enough to open up her booklet and let me know what they call a regular purchase. Anything that's $5,000 and below requires one quote. what they call a micro purchase is anything $10,000 and below requires 2 quotes. Anything that they would call a small purchase that doesn't require to go to their board, 3 quotes, is $250,000 or less. That is to fix appliances, boilers. I mean, she said she just purchased a truck for $50,000. She did take it to the board to let them know. I mean, she's not just making these frivolous spending habits because she's got the ability to do it. But, I mean, she has the ability to do something like that. So, final example is right now we have CIP process that's taking place. And one of the things that's listed in the motor pool is to do a replacement of some of our truck fleet, because we hear often from community members that, you know, a lot of our DPW trucks, who you see driving around primarily throughout the whole entire community in the parks or downtown or, you know, just around doing, you know, sewer checks, storm checks, et cetera. Recently, we've heard a lot of people commenting on how our fleet looks a little ragged. You know, we don't have all brand new looking fancy vehicles, but there's something to be said for that too. I mean, you don't want to be having every employee that's driving around the city having a brand new 2024 Dodge truck that's Super Duty and all this stuff. It's unnecessary. But we do acknowledge that there are some vehicles that are rusting out and they've been banged up over years, and our motor pool people do a great job in terms of, you know, refurbishing the vehicles to the best of their ability and fabricating and do what they can do to keep the lifespan of the vehicles for as long as possible. But what we'd like to do is go ahead and take money that we have in our CIP process, and rather than buying one $55,000 truck, go and give our motor pool fleet an opportunity to go to Municipal or MIDeas or Sourcewell or local car dealerships and find used vehicles that are still maintainable. They may not have a warranty, but they're refurbished, they are functioning, they will last a little bit longer than what we have currently, and then have vehicles that are not so banged up, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But we can't do that right now. So we are trying to work with Brad Fowler, our lawyer, so that we can go to the commission and see if there's a way to allow us to purchase used vehicles by giving myself, as well as the motor pool people, the opportunity to have a threshold as to what we can spend on a used vehicle. We don't know what that looks like. These are just new conversations that are taking place, because we want to be more conscientious of our money, that our city taxpayers' monies, and we have these challenges. So with that being said, talking to the department heads, honestly, $12,500 still seems like it would be a hindrance, given that this document lives for 10 years. And so, given everything that we know with inflation, while I realize that you have the CPI kind of stuff written in the language, CPI is usually only like maybe 3%. So it's not going to be like a huge difference when you're talking about buying major infrastructure pieces. So what we were asking for was maybe closer to like $30,000. So it's a little bit more reasonable. And we have some fluctuation where we can work with, all right, we need to fix the fire truck. We're not going to have John Joe and whoever and do piecemealing, or have them come in increments. Have them come at one time and fix the whole entire thing, be done with it, and walk out. And so that's kind of what we were hoping that you would reconsider.
What sort of checks and balances would that 30,000 have then?
Well, it would be through the purchasing policy, and then again, the purchasing policy would have it would have to be updated through the treasurer, but it would have to be something along the lines of what the Housing Commission has to do, which we do up to $5,000. So we have to get 3 quotes for something that's $5,000 or less, or $7,500 or less. Everything else under 5, I believe, is 2 quotes. And then again, over 7,500 would be going out to bid or the RFQ. So if the treasurer's office, or the treasurer herself, or himself, given she's gonna be retiring soon, if they were comfortable with doing quotes, or if they wanted to change the purchasing policy, that would be under their department, but that's currently the practice that we follow.
Could you explain in the case that you just stated, you want to replace for the whole fleet? Makes more sense to do it all at once. Why that can't simply be an upfront cost cleared with the city commission, and why you need that short-term cap increased as opposed to just having it be a project that you pursue with the city commission ahead of time?
So motor pool is a quirky fund itself. Like I explained, there's separate funds that go towards everything. We're not necessarily looking to replace the whole fleet, to do it at one time. If we were to do something like that, it would be along the approach of what we were given from outsourced company Enterprise. Are you familiar with Enterprise? I'm sure everybody's seen their commercials and whatever. But Enterprise has this program where they will come and buy out your whole entire fleet, cop cars, everything. And then they will give you brand new vehicles, and then you lease them. And then they will ensure they're under warranty, and everything else happens under their provision. Again, there's this persona of, is it really necessary for every single vehicle in the city that everybody drives to be brand new? No. So again, we just want to have the ability to purchase used vehicles rather than new vehicles.
My question is, could that not be part of a contract that the city agrees to with Enterprise, for example, on an as-needed basis up to a certain amount under one RFP, as opposed to just, as opposed to using this particular instrument of the charter and increasing all spending to a certain amount? Is it not possible to simply work in advance with the city commission, knowing that that's going to be a need, to work on an RFP for a greater amount, as opposed to having this be in other words, approved by the city commission ahead of time? Does it need to be subject to the caps? Standing as they can approve projects for larger dollar figures,
yeah.
as they certainly have.
If I'm understanding you correct, since you're talking about motor pool, are you asking to have a contract with Enterprise to have them switch out fleet?
In other words, why does it need to be tied to this single cost cap per purchase? Why can't it be tied to a larger contract where a company like Enterprise is under a contract with the city fulfilling these as needed? And the city commission already has advanced knowledge of it and has agreed to the terms of that contract and to a maximum cap on that contract that definitely, certainly exceed even the 12 or even the $30,000 that you're describing.
So companies like Enterprise want to do leases because that's where they gain their revenue. And the way that motor pool works is that if, let's say, wastewater is driving around their truck, and then they log however many hours they've used, and then it has to get maintained, and the maintenance that's done to it is logged. Those particular items that are taken care of for the IPP truck, it's the pre-treatment program, basically, for the industrial program. They have a dedicated truck because they have samplers in it and what have you. All of those working things that were tied to that truck will get then issued a fee to the wastewater, and the wastewater will then suffice and pay for the motor pool, including the staff hours. So with that being said, the more you deplete the fleet for maintenance purposes, the less money that there will be for mechanics and maintenance staff, And then we would get ourselves eventually into this like little pickle where we could weasel our ways out of not having adequate motor pool money because we wouldn't be working on a leased vehicle. Leasee or leaseor would want to be having it go to their dealership to have it get worked on. And then, you see where I'm going with, like, then you wouldn't have staff in the event for the older fleet to work on our heavy machinery and things of that nature.
I'm asking a broader question about the
Okay.
purchase mechanism as opposed to this case by case, right?
And if I may, I think the section that I have highlighted here, so upon written recommendation of the city manager, the city commission may waive the requirement of formal snow
Right.
bids for an expenditure. So I think in things like fire truck repairs or things like that are always gonna be over whatever threshold we set, there's nothing saying that the city couldn't go to the commission and say, can we get a different dollar amount for these things? Or to replace a vehicle and have like specific things in the purchase policy without necessarily, you know, raising these limits to $30,000 and then, you know, are people gonna care as much about getting the best price and the best value by giving them so much money?
That is what we would consider an emergency purchase, that paragraph.
Well, that's,
I wonder if there isn't an issue of perspective there. Because that to me, it says the city may waive requirement of the bid for expenditures. It doesn't qualify that as being in the case of an emergency or anything else. It simply offers that it's possible. There's no language in the charter restricting that to, per se, emergencies. It's just imposing a cap of whatever amount gets in that placeholder of a certain number, and otherwise requiring that sealed bids be obtained.
right. And the first sentence of section 8.10, detailed purchasing and contracting procedures shall be established by ordinance. And you said that there is a policy and procedures in place for that. And I think exceptions to this could happen through the ordinance. If you have 4 commissioners approving it, which is what it says is required, and they say, yeah, you know, these one-off things, you know, water system has to stay up, or the plow repairs, if something happens, we're gonna give that $25,000 whenever that happens. If it goes over that, that's fine, but that's in that city policy rather than here.
And Heather, that's really why I asked that original question about is the cap of 7.5 now 12.5 that's been proposed the only thing that's inhibiting those purchases? Because I don't see there where it is. I just see the requirement that the city commission needs to waive it. Now, I understand that some things may be truly emergent, like you've got to act on this before the ones that are on the shelves are gone, right? I'm wondering if this isn't something that we can work out through process where the commission could even have in advance approved certain items for replacement at market value, whether or not there's an immediate need, so long as, you know, provided that the budget is in place to buy them. I don't see the lack of, I guess, flexibility on the process end of this, or of creativity on the process end of this, as necessitating the increase in I'm not saying that we don't need to increase it, I'm just saying I don't see that as the sole thing that seems to be preventing some of the instances that you're describing.
I don't know if it's actually listed in the code of ordinances, so I can't speak to that specifically. But I can tell you in the purchasing policy booklet that I refer to with newer staff, giving them an explanation, it does say that it has to be that amount per the charter.
And that's what I'm wondering is, does that need to be corrected?
I mean, everything always is per the charter, so I don't know how you correct something to say conflict of the charter. Everything
No,
is
what I'm saying
based
is,
on the
it
charter.
sounds like maybe not enough information is being given in that resource material So if what's being presented to them is they can't make any purchases over $7,500, because that is the limit imposed in the charter, that would be an inaccuracy from my perspective, because obviously there is provision there for them to make additional larger purchases, they just have to go through the city commission.
Which is the delay that we have,
Right.
Right.
which is the problem.
We have, yeah, what I'm hearing are two different strands that are interconnected. One is, and I'm thinking, I'm already thinking what, not only are we gonna be concerned with inflation over the next few years, but we're going to be concerned with effects of tariffs. And certainly on construction materials, on steel, on vehicles, on whatever. And so what's occurring to me is that we can't necessarily, look at our crystal ball and cover our bases for what's gonna happen over the next 10 years. I do agree the base number would, the ordinance has come off of the charter. So if we want to change the ordinance, we have to change the charter language about this, so that's an important connection. So I would actually like to see whatever this ordinance is, we need to see these
City
the language that's in there and how that's worded, but I agree that, the process is also part of the problem because the commission only meets twice a month. And, I remember when we had that screw pump problem, that it ended up getting bought before it actually got to the commission for formal approval, because it was dire. That screw pump needed to be replaced. So maybe we need to be also looking at this process with the city commission, I don't know, but it seems to me like we need to take a closer look at
To what extent do
that
they want to be
too.
consulted?
well, we don't want to consult them too, but I just need to make sure we understand this process.
Your attorney would
Yeah.
probably be the one to best reflect that
Yeah.
kind of idea off of, but to my understanding, like you said, everything reflects to the charter from the ordinance.
Right.
So if it's listed for a dollar amount, it's
Right.
gonna say, follow what the charter says. That's been our instructions. To change the purchasing policy to state, something from the ordinance, it's gonna reflect to this. I mean, this is a Bible for the city.
Certainly seems like what's the point of putting a dollar amount in the charter if you can just change it willy-nilly with an ordinance to whatever you want as
I
needed?
don't think it's changeable.
No, you can't do that anyway.
I'm just, so, what I'm curious about is you've given us a whole lot of instances in which this amount wasn't enough that have happened, not just this year, but,
Over the course of several years.
and maybe I don't understand correctly, which is very easy to happen because there's so many complications and I'm not that well versed.
Oh, come on, Foster.
I'm under the impression that the commission can revise the charter on their own. And this is a singular instance of $1 amount that's prevented the city in numerous cases from being able to easily and efficiently fix things that they needed to fix. I don't expect you to necessarily have the answer, but why hasn't the city commission tried to change this through a revision in the last number of
The
years?
city commission can write an amendment to any part of the charter, but it still has to go through the voters.
Everything has to get voted on
Everything
in
has to
this
get voted on
document.
in the charter, so if they want, for example, I know,
So have they put it before the voters and it failed? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not aware that the commission has ever submitted an amendment to the charter on this particular.
No, we haven't. We've just dealt with it to be completely frank with you, because it's a lot to go through that process, as you guys are all aware. So,
I mean, this seems like a lot, what we're doing is a lot more than just one specific
Yeah.
oh yeah,
amendment. And I can understand that it's not nothing, but it seems like what you're telling me is that repeatedly the city has ran into this and it's caused a lot of problems. Why hasn't the commission tried to address it?
because
And I don't-
staff
like I said, I don't
is
expect
working
you to have
off
an
of what we have as our living document that we have to abide by. I mean,
And I mean, the living document affords the commission the ability to,
Good, but I mean, we knew that coming closer to the end of its term,
yeah.
that, how many times do you wanna go before the people for a vote? And then they come across where you got this document that you've been working on for several years. I mean, you're given like, I think, 3 years to work on this. And then it goes before and then they see it again, they're like, oh my God, another one of these. I mean, that's kind of how voters are, right? I mean, they get kind of like deterred, like, so you want to do it one time and just be, very thorough and show that people took the time to talk through this and take it as serious as it needs to be.
So, and I don't know that we or you are gonna know the answer to this question either, but it sounds like the housing commission that you cited, where was it like 5, 10, 30 something, or 25?
It was 5, 10, and 250.
Okay, thanks, yeah. Is there some reason that we couldn't adopt similar language in our charter? And would that be potentially offer more flexibility on the city's end without like raising the dollar amount to $30,000 or $40,000? Like, it seems like it would give you greater flexibility to go all the way up to 250, but still put in some kind of requirement.
That's
I
kind
don't
of,
know that, like, there could be, like, we can't do it in the charter, I don't know.
if the city commission approval process creates too much delay, is there some other mechanism that we can put in here for oversight or review that would permit purchases above whatever cap is in place on there, but that would get you to yes.
Or just a
Sooner.
range of caps.
You guys are both describing is what's called the purchasing policy procedure. And so what Linda described to me is right here, what you have is $12,500. Her cap is $250,000. Her purchasing policy is 5, 10, 250. And then anything goes over 250, she's supposed to take it to the board.
And that's what I'm talking
That's what
about,
we
is
would
not
do internally.
cap,
If
but-
you have a cap for us at $30,000 and then it has to go out to bid or RFQ, and then the treasurer would come up with a purchasing policy that they were comfortable with, whether that be, 5, 15, then 30, and then anything that goes over 30 would go to the city commission and bids and et cetera. Then that would be based off of the treasurer's discretion to create that policy, which would then, a new policy has to be approved by the city commission. Whether that be, 1 quote, 2 quotes, 3 quotes, whatever the criteria might be.
Stacey, talk to us about what we added in terms of adjusting for inflation.
What specifically do you want me to?
Well, well, my understanding was, we picked that number, the 12.5, with the understanding that it would need to be adjusted for inflation over the course of 10 years. So are we not covered? Like, if we don't,
What you're saying is the 12.5 isn't enough to start with.
that I understand.
1% a year.
But whatever dollar amount we start with,
Yeah.
I mean, adjusting for inflation is better than making no alterations for the period of the charter until the next time
I'm
it's
inclined to
revised.
agree.
So I think it's still a step in the right direction. Is it gonna be enough? If the cost of vehicles exceeds, but I mean, at least we're making an attempt to keep it somewhat current. If tariffs are put in place, that's gonna increase the inflation rate, and then that's gonna increase with it. So hopefully it would cover a lot of things and not get to the point where, it's at 7,500, you're asking for 30,000. There's a huge gap there.
Don't forget, this isn't even going to be in force. Whatever we decide isn't going to be in force until probably 2027.
Let's look to it, how we arrived at that 12.5. Didn't we apply inflation to?
Yep, so we took the 7,500 from the date that the charter was last put into effect and calculated out what that rate is, and it was a little bit under 12,500.
And there's nothing to say that was magical when people ended on 7.5 last time. That's just to say there kind of was some intentionality and presence there.
I get the intentions, but it's not practical. it is a major roadblock for our department to focus on making sure that infrastructure and maintenance is being taken care of in a timely fashion. It's what I want to just completely make sure that you're fully aware of. This dollar amount is a hindrance. Absolutely is a hindrance.
I come back to Foster's point then, I feel like it's been very poorly addressed in that case.
I
Again,
don't think it's been addressed for the last,
So,
you know.
can you speak
last
to, historically, like, you've given us some recent examples that seem to be applicable from the last 5 years or so. We've had this charter.
this has just been the last year.
Yeah, so we've had this charter for, I can't remember how long. When this charter was first enacted, were there significantly less, like was 75 a lot closer? Or was it always
Enough.
not enough?
Yeah, what was?
I can't speak to that because when this process was taking place, I had just been hired and I was greener than green in the last year of going through it. And so if I had to guess, that number was probably solicited by Steve Sobers. And he was pretty much the person that always focused on, you know, let's lessen this, let's lessen this, let's lessen this. Because he always thought that it had to go before the commission. That's not ill-intended and it's not a knock on him. But at that time, there wasn't these delays that are occurring very frequently with infrastructure and trucks. We bought a Tahoe, 2 Tahoes, because we stumbled upon 2 to be available. It took over a year for those Tahoes to become available. We had to scurry and go to the commission and ask for permission to purchase the 2 in hopes that the company wouldn't let go of them. They sat at the garage for about 6 months because we couldn't get them in the queue with Procom to upfit them because they didn't have all the materials. They recently just went to Procom at the beginning of December, one of them did. They guaranteed us that the one vehicle would be available by the end of last year. It's still sitting there. We sent the other one down to Procom to go get upfitted because we have Axon scheduled, well, Public Safety has Axon scheduled to get the in-car cameras put in on January 22nd, and it still might not meet that deadline. We are dealing with delays that are beyond our control, and if you add on weeks on weeks on weeks on top of it, with a third party and then a fourth party, and we know it's only gonna happen further, that's the reasoning behind allowing us to just be proactive and try to fix things when they need to be addressed.
Makes me wonder, because part of it is the cap, right? But
Yeah.
part of it is also the process, because you're gonna still have some stuff that's beyond this cap.
Oh yeah, I gotta buy a screw pump for $350,000,
And
but that
so
needs to go before the
That
commission.
needs to go, but I'm thinking about that stuff that's just a little bit over, 'cause the minute we put it at 30, it's gonna be something for 31.5. So my
And that would be the
question,
city manager's responsibility to make sure that it goes before the commission.
and so my question is, given that, then again, we run immediately into that delay issue that you're talking about, right? Is there additional instruction that we can add here that provides for a process that gets you faster turnaround and lets you act more nimbly on those things where time really is of the essence or the product's gonna get sold to somebody else?
Yeah, I
Right?
thought about that.
Is there a way that we can say, okay,
Expedited emergency procedure.
right, I mean, I don't know
You
that,
can't buy this product if it's sold before
Right.
we're approved for it,
and
so.
maybe there's certain product classes where we can sort of instruct the commission to consider that and be prepared to provide advance approval, knowing that there are those challenges to the purchasing process. Maybe we can look at what the requirements are in here for who needs to sign off on those and whether or not it needs to go fully before the city commission versus manager and mayor or something like that, like, or manager in consultation with. I don't know what is in the realm of possibility there, but it seems to me like the problem is not just the dollar amount, the problem is there sometimes you're necessarily gonna be beyond it, and we want the city to be able to, you know, responsive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the whole purposes for doing the charter in the first place was to address issues like this, where the city is not nimble. And you guys are not nimble because the city is not nimble in terms of trying to respond. And what you described to us this evening is just, you know, one department after another, one on top of, on top of, on top of, on top of, multiple things that are needing repair, needing maintenance, you know, and of course, you know, I know from the fire trucks, you know, fire trucks are a humongous investment. And of course, you need them to be in top working order because of the nature of why we have them in the first place. And for the safety of the firefighters and so forth, and for the safety of our public safety folks and so forth. So, okay. I think we have a lot of stuff we need to talk about. Let us do a little more digging on this because I agree with Ann completely. Did you want to say something, Fuzz?
Yeah, I want to ask Heather, and I think you probably already gone over this, but I don't always remember everything. How did you arrive at the number of 30,000? Is 30,000, is that a number that you think is low, like the minimum that you need, the appropriate, like the most that you think that you can ask for?
I think it's low.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. Like you're coming
It's low.
to us with a number that you think that we're not gonna wanna go higher than.
If you had your druthers, what would you ask for?
50.
I was thinking you would ask for.
How are we going to convince the voters that that's the right thing to go from 7,500 to 50,000? That's the problem.
That's why I said 30. I'm being realistic.
But if we are also looking at changes to procedure that maybe make, it's no longer apples to apples, right? If we're kind of making that cap relevant in a different way and there are other handbrakes in there, then it might be more palatable. I'm certainly open to it.
The simple
I want
fact
it
is
to function.
the people ultimately want a working government. They expect the roads to be paved. They expect clean water. They expect proper sanitary, you know,
They don't want to
wastewater
have their
treatment plant. They
water
expect that.
Shut up.
To boil their water for 3 days.
And the simple fact is, we can show them data on the cost, the inflationary effect, all of this stuff. Where we get into this, you know, this morass, is, you know, you have 2 and 3 vendors operating on different systems. You have different timetables for when they can do the work, and sometimes are weather related. You have continuum from things that are absolutely, we have to have this right now, replaced, to things that can wait. And of course, the CIP process helps to do that, right? Because they triage their projects and they themselves look at what's immediately necessary, what they can wait a year or 2 years or whatever, and so forth. So there's a whole budgeting process that goes around this, but understanding the myriad things that impact these projects and the maintenance and so forth, it's just something, it's good for people to be aware of. I know that was an eye-opener for me when I came into city government and started learning about this stuff. And it's like, this is why things don't turn on a dime. This is why things don't, you know, we have to postpone our instant gratification sometimes because the world is, you know, this is a complex system. So let's.
I do have one
I have
question.
another comment too.
You may not have an answer, but of the purchases that the city makes in a given year, how many of those are time sensitive, can't really be planned because something went wrong and now we need to address it? Where that limit is really impacting the ability to do something. Because I would imagine a lot of the city purchases in, you know, the treasurer's office or something like that are going to be lower price items than a couple of other departments.
Sure.
So perspective wise, yes, there's definitely cases where the dollar amount's probably never gonna be adequate for what we have in the charter. But for all of the other departments, it might be excessive, and really it should be questioned, because those areas shouldn't be making those purchases. So like 80-20 rule, you know, if we can cover 80% of the city's needs with 25,000, do that and then come up with something different for the 20%.
Something that's more fluid, yeah.
Because I feel like a lot
good
of
sense.
the scenarios you gave are the 20% of expenses that couldn't be planned out in advance and things like that, and they're kind of time sensitive type of things. Where does that fall?
So like you're, like a 25.
That kind of gets
minimum
back
and then
to,
50.
something along what the Housing Commission does, like a tiered, some kind of a tiered system.
Certain amount of.
That
Which
we-
is under place through our purchasing policy. Again, that would have to be revamped and done by the treasurer, which then would have to be approved by the commission. All policies have to be. So it would be the rule of thumb based off of what the treasurer felt like comfortable with. That being said, I would say all of these departments that I listed that have maintenance requirements, 20% would be community development, the clerk's office, and the treasurer's office. Everybody else, we all are the ones that spend the money. And that would be Public Works, which is the 5 divisions,
Safety.
and public safety. Well, I was gonna list the divisions just so that everybody was aware, but we have Dial-A-Ride, we have parks, we have water, we have wastewater, and streets. And when I say water and wastewater, that doesn't just mean the plants and their filtration systems, it's also distribution and production and transmission is how we identify them, where the water goes out and where the water comes out, in and out, excuse me. But, yeah, so 80% of the expenses that fall under this section are coming from Public Works, Public Safety, and, I mean, that's really the brunt of it. And our jobs are to make everything look pretty, right? So like, taxpayers driving around town, they don't want to see water coming out of the street. They have a fire, they want to see public safety there like ASAP. So we have an obligation as staff to make sure that those services are readily available, and when somebody's at their house and they turn the faucet on, they know that they're reassured that they're gonna have clean drinking water readily available at all times and not be inconvenienced with a boil water notice when it doesn't even affect them. Again, I go back to the 12-inch main that broke last summer, and we had to close from the library to Maple Street when we really only had to do one block. That kind of stuff is happening more and more and more. The infrastructure is getting older.
And not only that, but the longer you make do with a solution like that, the bigger the problem ultimately becomes when
100%,
you have to
yeah.
address it.
So if we
100%.
had something like the 12,500 in here, and then something else that said, like infrastructure limit starts at 50,000.
That's what I was thinking.
Because that's gonna cover a lot of like the big things that need to be addressed right away. Would something like that work?
I think that'd be fair. I mean, I don't know what kind of expenditures they have in the departments of the clerk's office and the treasurer's office, and I can't imagine they have very many large purchases that occur. I mean,
Those would be
they're
mostly
great
tech.
departments and they have a function for the city, but they're basically looking for, pen, paper, ink, that kind of stuff. So I can't imagine any one of those departments going over the 12.5, to be completely honest with you.
I mean, if they're
That's just gonna be
replacing
miscellaneous expenses that are in the budget already.
technology would probably do it.
Yeah, you start going software and computers.
Well, technology's a quirky one. They have contracts that get set in place. So like, you're not gonna go to the city commission and ask them if they can have a contract with Verizon for a government package. Like, you're not gonna miss a deal like that. It's just automatically, technology has the ability to make sure that that is available, because it's not just for the city. It's also for the county and the cops and the fire. I mean, technology here is bigger thing than just the city itself. So,
How about if we go with, say, in the first section, 810, we put $30,000 in there, and then down in the emergency purchasing, we would say, under emergency purchasing for health and safety items, approval of the city manager and the department head, do something like that, can spend up to 50,000 and must notify the city commission that they have the authorization to do 50,000 or 75,000 or whatever number is, and just expand on the emergency procedures.
And even if, like you're saying, if we're worried about credibility, right, with voters and voters being accepting of such an increase, you could even limit it to items that are specifically for, like, specific.
Yeah, that's what I said, health and safety.
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to when there's an emergency purchase,
right.
is exactly that, health and safety for the community.
That
and
might
ensuring
be
that things
a
are
harder case to make, that the fleet, right?
Oh, yeah.
Motor pool meets that criterion,
But
but
again-
that maybe is something you could plan ahead with city commission for and get advance approval.
Sure, but like, if you put, like, she had suggested for the 810, put 30, that opens up the ability for motor pool to do
them
the
as
used
single
cars
expenditures,
and
yeah.
the smaller purchases, rather than, like I said, buying a $55,000 truck for one person. But yeah, that would be definitely very helpful and buy us some time, and then, I don't know, I hate to say it, but in 10 years, it could be 65,000 is the minimum, you know? And who knows what's gonna happen with.
Hopefully with scaling for inflation, we've accounted for some of that, but there's probably gonna be specific pockets of inflation in some types of products that's not going to account for. We'll just have to trust that our future folks are gonna revisit.
In my mind, and it's just based on my own instincts and imagination, if the city commission had gone to a vote of the public to say that they were like, we want to raise this $7,500 to $50,000, that would be on the ballot. People will be reading that amendment to the charter, right? And they'll be voting on that specific thing. We're not doing that. We're asking the public to vote on the entire charter. There's no language on the ballot saying this is what changed and this isn't what, this is staying the same. So in my imagination, the challenge for us as the Charter Revision Commission is to convince the public on the whole that our work is good and well thought out and worthwhile. Which I think that this is pretty dry, boring stuff that most of the public doesn't really want to know about. That's why they want to pay other people to work at City Hall and not volunteer their own time, and why you don't have anybody in our audience today. But so my question to you is, do you think that I'm way off base? Do you think that, because it is supposed to be published in the Pioneer, that the public is going to actually go to the trouble of reading it and thinking about it and take issue with this number? Or are you just afraid that it's possible, right? If you don't ask for more, the public might notice it and take issue. I don't know if that question is very clear.
Kind of, and if I don't answer it, let me know if you need to do a follow-up question, but when I was briefly speaking to the city manager this afternoon, you know, he had asked me what I was gonna go and ask for, and I said, well, you know, ideally, I'd like to go for a larger dollar amount, given the housing commission, they're $250, and he said, well, maybe you should ask for 50. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, God. So that's why I went with the
Housing
30.
commission's needs are somewhat distinct from the cities, and I'm wondering to what extent that 250 is influencing larger thinking by department heads on this as well. I'm not saying that the 30K, I don't think that's unrealistic. Heck, I'd make it 50 for everybody if you know, if it was easy and we always had the money and we didn't have some fiscal responsibility. Because I think we all agree that we want this city and its residents to have the best possible do think, to Foster's point, that at what point do people not want to know versus do they want to know? I think 50K is pretty much that point, to be honest. I think that's a dollar figure that most people can assign a value to in terms of things that they've acquired in their lives that are maybe for some of them, some of the bigger purchases that they've ever made in their lives. And that probably is, at least for me, that is, if I have a concern about this, it's that we're starting to get into money that people can attach to. That was my down payment on my house. That was the cost of my boat. Was of whatever. And when people can tether that amount.
It's not the amount, that wasn't my question. My question is, do you think that people are gonna even notice?
No, I know. And what I'm saying is,
Make it visible to you.
If it's not pointed out to
it's
them,
that's our responsibility, partly as a committee, right?
I don't know that it is. I think it's our responsibility to convince people that we made the right decision on their behalf by being responsible and making the best educated changes that we can possibly make. I think that we could go to the public and try to explain all of this stuff, but it took Heather a freaking hour to go through
I wouldn't.
We could go to the
examples that are
public, but
valid,
the public be there for us.
but like,
That's a good point.
you know.
And, I say,
If the explanation takes that long, I don't think that we have the public's attention for that.
We
I
don't.
don't think that the public has the attention to read through the entire charter when it gets published in the Pioneer. I do think it's possible that, a responsible reporter could take notice and make a fuss out of it. Do I think that there are responsible reporters at the Pioneer? Generally, no. Is it possible that that somebody suddenly
disagree.
becomes responsible for an
It's-
instant? Yeah.
This is a matter of practice, though. Whether it is a reporter or just a member of the public, anybody leafing through this should not be confronted with a change that gobsmacks them, because it's gonna produce a response. Right. It's gonna lead people to say, why is this being conducted in this
Yeah, I mean, it only
way?
takes one person
Exactly.
of being diligent, no doubt, to like
So,
raise a
and-
stink.
7,500, I mean, I think for most people is an
I think
insanely low
everybody
amount.
knows that that's too low.
it is an
Yes.
insanely
I
low
don't think it
number.
is. I mean, I think for a lot of people, like, I'm pretty poor. $7,500 is a crap ton of money. It's the same
For a running
difference to me.
city, for a running city.
What I'm saying is, it's the same difference to me if it's $7,500 or $50,000 or $100,000. I don't have that much money, period. And I actually think the majority of people in Big Rapids do not have $7,500
I don't disagree with you.
spend on
but
anything,
I
so.
think that the understanding among the public would be that that's a low amount for running a city.
Yeah, I mean, I think that,
Just in 5 minutes of her presentation, I'm writing amounts down,
I'm,
not in the full hour.
I certainly feel that way. I'm just saying that, like, I think for a lot of people in Big Rapids, any amount of money is just a large sum of money, like $7,500
I
is
agree.
all
I agree.
It's our job.
than they can imagine.
It's our job as the commission. First of all, we undertook this because we knew that there were items in the charter that no longer allow the city to function effectively. That's kind of our hook. The changes that we have made, the changes
And this
that we
is a
are
big part of it.
proposing, well, when you consider that public safety is almost half of the budget by itself. And DPW is probably almost the other half, with the exception of a few departments. And, Heather and I have had this conversation many times, because public works is one of those things where nobody notices it until things break down, and then they're pissed off.
Usually at me.
Well, you're the boss lady, so- Right, so, but effectively, this is why the charter is not so exciting or sexy to anybody, because this is about the nuts and bolts of how you run
It's
a
neither
study.
exciting nor sexy.
Sorry, it's not very exciting.
Your pardon, yeah.
But, well, see, I get geeked by this stuff personally, but the point is, when we get ready to engage the public, this is the message that we are communicating. And we have to be very realistic about costs today, are exponentially higher. You know, I remember, now, let's take as a good example, Robin Hood Airport, and the runway thing.
Oh, Lord.
Right? Which, God bless him, Steve Schroeder and his team have been working on for like a decade, right? And they've just kept with it and kept with it. But in the time between when that project got approved and when they finally got to get going was at least 2 years, and that price tag ratcheted up another $2 million. And this is the world we're living in, which means that to the best of our ability, we want to be, of course, we want the city to be good fiscal stewards, but the city government needs to have adequate flexibility to respond in time to needs. And that's the message that we can communicate. I'm going to suggest that we leave this with us so that we can play with it. I think we've got some really good ideas here about how we can maybe parse this so that it makes better sense. Before we let you go, I'm going to ask you to just respond really quickly about Park and Rec.
Yep.
You wanted to reduce membership from 9 to 7.
Well, there was another item on here, did we touch on change orders, and you guys are gonna tweak that, correct? Okay. Park and Rec, yeah, so we struggle, as Foster knows, having a full board. 9 members just seems excessive to have a full board. So over the course of the last few years, we've talked about reducing it to 7 members, so that way we have a full board. You know, say that we struggle with quorums, and we're gonna have a quorum tomorrow night, but in past practice, when you have 9 members, you have to have 5 members for a quorum, and that can prove itself to be challenging and disappointing at times, because the purpose of the park board is to give suggestions on how to operate the parks, and as well as the pool and recreation programs, all of the great things that create quality of life for the citizens in Big Rapids and honestly the surrounding area. But they also take into consideration projects that are gonna be forthcoming and that will improve the park system. And they have the opportunity to get into the detail and ask the questions with the landscape architects and staff and whoever's gonna be advocating and fundraising and soliciting all these different changes. And they can get into the details so it's not bogging down the commission. It's a good group of people that are very enthusiastic about doing good work for the community. And when you struggle to get a quorum to make a recommendation to the city commission, it's disappointing when those individuals are excited and they come, and then you gotta give them a call and you're like, yeah, sorry, we gotta reschedule. So,
Does 9, what's the history, where did that, 9 seems high to me, I guess.
It is
in the
high.
first place. So where did that come from? Was it always that?
since I've been here, yeah, it's been 9.
How many are on the board now?
We have 9.
9?
I counted it yesterday.
Is it 9 right now?
Yeah, I counted. I was really surprised, actually.
I would be surprised at that
I think
too.
we're at 9, but Jim just joined.
Yeah, Jim just joined.
And we had a couple other people that are
And then
fairly-
Vicky just did an oath, but then Rekka came off.
Yeah, but we gained, I can't remember everybody's name, but like, we've had a few recent.
There's been a little bit of a turnover, but Johnny's gonna be termed out soon.
I was actually wondering whether, it says it shall consist of 9, maybe we, like,
Change the quorum amount?
well,
That
I
would
was
make the
thinking that we would say that it shall consist of no fewer than 7. Because if we said, if we changed it, and we still had people on the board, and it has to be 7, who are we kicking off?
Yeah, no, you would wait until it gets termed out.
So it seems like we could have
Still got 3
no
years
fewer
left.
than,
I was gonna say, yeah.
we said no fewer than 7, and quorum shall be 5, or 4, whatever. It
It
would,
would have to be, quorum would be 3, right?
I don't,
4 out of 7.
I don't,
4 out of 7.
I don't know how it would work. Could we allow, like, somehow we have 10 people that wanna be on the Parks Board, but we have a minimum of 7, would quorum go up if we?
Fewer
by
than
necess-
7,
by ne-
quorum of half.
Would quorum go up if we had 10 people on the board, even if the minimum?
Your requirement,
Over the minimum?
if your requirement is at least 7, then 4 would be your quorum,
Okay, so,
regardless of who else shows up.
yeah, so that's what I was just thinking, is like, we could just set up, say, no fewer than,
I'm fine with that.
If you do that, then you go, the Parks Board wants to do something, so then you're gonna get 15 people that don't wanna do it and say they're gonna be on the board, and there's no limit on how many people can be on the board, they come in and change everything.
Well, not true, because the only way that you can added to the board is the mayor has to appoint you. So the city clerk would have a conversation with the mayor, and the mayor can say,
Imagine the
sorry, too
lawsuits on
many.
that?
I'm sorry?
The lawsuits on that?
It's a volunteer position, so.
I don't imagine though that you wanna be,
If I wanna be on that board and there's unlimited openings, why are you gonna keep me off?
you don't wanna have unlimited openings. You
Well, that's-
Okay, anything.
don't wanna have unlimited
Why not
openings.
just,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, not unlimited openings.
No.
7 to 9 would be good, but
Sure.
not.
I mean, I think that it'd be a pretty awesome problem if we had so many people that wanted to join the Parks Board. that We were trying,
I know Foster's over there like 10
What would
people.
happen if somebody was against something, you know,
no fewer than 7, no greater than 10?
Fine by me.
yeah, like I said, my only thinking was it'd be really a shame if we had people on the board and we had to decide how to kick people
Yeah,
off.
no, that's a good thought.
Yeah,
Can I tell you, we have interest indicators, and when people come in and they fill those out, they check multiple things. If we have a full board somewhere and they wanna look at something else, we're gonna try and put them
Direct them-
somewhere else.
direct
Because
them
we
somewhere
need
else.
all the boards to have, I don't wanna put everybody in one board and not have enough in another.
I know, I checked like 3 or 4 things off, and Tammy says, oh, they need it right here.
We have to, you know.
We appreciate it.
No, Tammy did, she says, all right, we're gonna check this, come on, let's. Somebody mentioned that at our barbecue one time.
Yeah.
Should we have a special session?
We,
Feels like it needs a lot more detailed.
Well, you guys have time, so if you need to do what you gotta do and you want me to come back, I can come back, it's not a problem.
I'm just thinking there might be some stuff that we work around on and think of as a solution, and you might see a reason why, no, it's just another roadblock.
It does seem like a bigger issue
Happy to
than
do
us
that.
just having
And
a
it feels like
15-minute
we need
chat
to
after.
have a deliberate, like, whether it's just our next meeting or a subcommittee meeting or something, it feels like we need to have a dedicated discussion.
Happy to come back whenever you guys want.
on the purchasing issue.
Yeah.
We still have like 4 under A of new business. Meetings are in September because,
No idea. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Dang it.
Our fiscal year starts in July, terms end in May.
I thought you were gonna know for sure.
what I'd floated, when this came up in another thing, was that it's like the midway point, and so you have a fiscal year that starts and then you don't, like, I don't know.
That makes no sense, cause
for some
fiscal
reason.
year, for the state ends at the end of September, begins October 1st. Our fiscal year ends at the end of June, starts at the beginning of July. The terms for Park and Rec Board members end in May.
That's, and the terms for planning commission end in May, and another of them end in May, and it almost sounds like you're giving people summer break and then coming back in September.
Yeah.
But the boards don't stop meeting over the summer, so that never made.
Park and
that made
Rec
sense
will meet
either.
in July, but that's not that huge of a delay.
You don't want like a bunch of new members coming in to make like a budgetary decision or something. So you stagger when like the fiscal year starts versus, that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, our budgetary process began in November, and we are currently in the process of, in the next few weeks, internally staff looking at CIPs, which then go to the planning commission, which then go to the city commission, so, I mean, dates don't jive.
Yeah, well, like I said, like
So like I said, I have no
to
idea.
come,
We're gonna need to look at that.
All right.
People considered Parks and Rec predicated on activities over the summer and then sort of
yeah, I mean, like
their-
Heather
their
said, it's an
administrative
advisory
activities and-
board that like, I mean, I don't.
A little mashuggy.
Yeah, no doubt, for sure.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for? Thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting you all.
That was really helpful.
Heather.
Thank
Happy
you.
to come back if you need me again. Just let me know. Yes.
I get the impression that somewhere you've got some very detailed notes about those different expenditures and stuff that you cited to us at the start. Would you be willing to share those, like just like a bulleted list of some of the different?
Would I
use
add it off?
cases?
You want
Yeah.
like an email from Karen? I can
that would
shoot her
be
an
great.
email.
I'm just thinking if later on we kind of
Something
need
to
to make
reference.
the case a little bit, that was pretty sound
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah,
building it
very well
out.
done.
Hugely helpful.
Happy to do so.
And way better than my notes.
My scribbles all over the place.
I should have done the
I'll
full sheet.
Like I can fit it here.
Yeah, that's what I did. I started out in my little margins and then like, wait a minute, I gotta
Good night.
turn the page.
Thank you, Heather,
Thanks,
so
Heather.
much.
Have a good night. All right. Back to old business, real fast. Real fast, we're just taking the highlight off of 8.5 because I think we've already covered this, correct? Yeah, we talked about the mills and the 15 mills and so on and so forth, so that's done. Section 9.3, and I think we talked about this the last time. Our city assessor said there was nothing in the statute about the language for 9.3, suggested we should match how other board members are reviewed. So we need to just go through anywhere where removal of people from a board occurs and make sure that that language is consistent across. All right? Any issues on that one?
Am I getting rid of the highlight for that?
I'd say
Or
keep it on
maybe
until
it's
we
a-
have a chance to read.
Yeah, let's just leave it until we get a chance to wordsmith it. Okay, meeting dates for this year. Item 8B, Karen has given us the list. One thing, yeah, we're gonna need to be thinking about and working with Mr. Letzman in terms of setting up a timeline now for this year in terms of when we can reasonably get a draft ready to send to Lansing. That, we were hoping to aim for late September, early October, so just let's keep that in the back of our mind right now. But to the best of my knowledge, these are our dates for this year. I think so. Okay, you have in your packet the resolution that we need to pass in order to present a budget amendment to the city commission. And attached to that is my position paper. Hoping you all have a chance to take a look at it. So are there any questions on this before we vote on the resolution?
I have a question.
Yes.
Why does it say, the budget amendment is for 10,000? Are we assuming that the contract will be modified?
The contract has already been modified per our request
Okay,
to Mr. Lessman to cap it there. Just remember, we have to submit a new budget for 25, 26 on whenever that is due.
September, just kidding.
July.
You said it, so,
Yeah, I know.
you know.
Well, the new budget, new fiscal year starts July 1st. We need to check with Carla to find out when, because I remember last year, we had to actually have our budget ready in March,
Yeah, they haven't,
even though they weren't gonna vote on it a little bit later, so we need to double check about that. We had asked him to reduce the cap, and I think this was also maybe per some of Mr. Fowler's advice when he had taken a look at it. So this is for any fees incurred between, let's say, January 21st, if the commission is okay with it, to June 30 this year. Okay, are there any other questions on that?
I would like to take a brief bathroom recess, but I noticed that it says that we have reviewed the first 19 chapters, and I don't know that I want to vote on something that we haven't actually done yet.
I was assuming we were gonna get through that tonight.
I know, but like,
So I appreciate your point.
That's good.
I don't wanna send it to them until we've actually done it.
I was thinking, by January 21st, we would have done that, but I take your point.
I mean, we can meet again if we want. I don't know, if we haven't gotten through everything before.
No, I mean,
Gets it
we
done.
can amend it to say that the commission is almost completed with the first review. We don't have to, that's not going to affect our reason for hiring a
Yeah.
consultant, but I appreciate your point. Are you okay if Karen, you want to just write that in and then we can vote on that? Different wording?
I can
so
change,
that-
I can change the number, what chapter we're gonna be on. I don't know if we're gonna get through any more tonight or not.
You can, no, you can just
It's
say.
You could also just speed run 19 right now.
gonna say.
How long is it? This may be
You want me to take just chapters out?
Change it to nearly completed?
Has nearly completed, yeah, their first review of
Nearing
the charter.
completion.
Just take
It's
the
not
number
even
out.
a page.
I just wasn't sure, like,
It's not even a page. How,
I mean, we're supposed to get 16,
I was
17.
gonna say 16,
oh,
17.
I see.
not just
Yeah,
19.
that's right.
It's-
But if we did skip
It's
ahead
not a
to
lot,
19, we could say we
but
did 19.
I still feel like we could get there.
Oh, you people are crafty.
Politicians are running out.
I think that we have to,
Let's take a quick bathroom break.
thank you.
I'd say we speed run
I
it.
think she has to unlock.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Well, all four of us.
During voting, you had to.
There's not a lot.
good.
I have like 2 questions.
Restrooms
Oh, there's Karen.
Karen's,
It's a voice. Okay, yes, we're good.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I wonder how much of it is just the city is at like their maximum capacity of this person goes from here to there, to here, to there. They can't
right,
predict or discover all of the problems.
all the possible things that will
Because-
malfunction.
Because they're just going from one problem to the next problem to the next problem, and so they run into something and they're like, I would fix this right away, but I can't because, and then it ends up, costing the city more money because we're trying to prevent them from wasting money, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, we could conversely, like raise taxes or something to have more city staff to go around and discover problems before they happen so that we can better plan for emergencies that might save money.
I don't think
you're
that's-
Added salary.
There's sort of a where do you cut off? sort of
I would like.
I'm just guessing.
The CIP puts the money there for the different departments, usually have a backup. This isn't extra money, they
I
just
wrote
want to
myself a
spend
note to send that.
their own money.
That was why I asked her that though, in particular, is the cap the only thing holding it back, right? And, or is there, to a certain extent, is the budget just not there for it?
The immediacy is not there. The money's there in the CIP. They put it, the city is really good at putting money aside for future things. We're very good
And
at
for
it.
emergency stuff.
And that's where that money's gonna come from. They just can't spend it because they gotta get approval,
Yeah,
And the issue for them is the time delay.
immediacy.
figure out how to make that more streamlined, faster. I don't know if it's, like you were saying, Brian,
I was gonna say, is that us, though? I don't know.
I'm
During
not sure that's gonna be within our
City
purview.
city manager and department.
City manager and
should be able to just say, we need this, the money's there, let's get it, and.
and
we'll notify
if it's on like an approved list of emergency products that you could need or something like that, maybe there's a way to.
We could also, I mean, as I recall, there are provisions in here about, emergency commission meetings. And we could insist that the commissioners meet for emergency purposes when there are purchases that need to be.
She brought up, Foster, they'd be
I'm
getting
just-
together every other week or every week,
Well, I mean,
It
what
would
she was
be
saying is like,
very-
they're waiting every month to go before the commission, and it's like, well, maybe the commission needs to meet more frequently than that.
Do you get our commission packets?
I'm just saying, like,
No, I'm just curious. You still get them? Or you don't get them?
No.
I see what Lorraine prints off every other
You
week.
can access them on the website. And I've asked, I think Karen is,
Add you to my list.
I mean, if the commission, are you saying that the commission packets are really lengthy?
What I'm saying is there's position papers and there's backup documents to show you why they need what they need and when they need it and what they've done to. So I think it would maybe give you better insight to some of those things.
And that's
I
the
don't-
other
I
thing
still don't
too is,
I'm missing what you're trying to communicate.
I'm not sure. I think it just might help explain some of the emergency purchases and, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't
I'm
matter.
not questioning that they're emergency purposes.
No, I know that, but
I'm saying that like, the reason why the emergency purchases aren't happening faster is because the bottleneck is not just this dollar amount, it's that the commission isn't meeting regularly enough to approve the emergency purchases.
is it
Also-
realistic to ask them to come together?
especially if they're also
For anything over
reviewing,
$7,500?
I don't know, I mean, like, how much material do they go through at a city commission meeting? How long do the commissions last?
It depends.
Maybe the commission meetings would be shorter.
on the agenda.
I don't think this is necessarily improved by regular cadence. I think
I mean, I don't either, I'm
just
just
you've got a bunch
saying
of
that
people who've got
it's
day
possible.
jobs who are also trying
You
to
don't
do
wanna
it
make
through
these
the
positions
city.
undesirable.
And they've, exactly, if they've already got about as much homework as they can handle, how much more emergency you might have to show up on a Tuesday stuff do we wanna add in? But there's gotta be a way to,
I was just saying that like,
Yeah.
there is this other
I
I'm
get
going
you.
to ask,
avoid the bottleneck.
Karen, I think, is going to send out to all of us the purchasing policy procedure
That'd be
from the treasurer's office, which maybe can give us a little bit of insight on.
What do you guys think about having, like a limit on here of 50,000 goes to the commission? And at 25,000, it goes to a city approval group, city manager, department heads, whatever that group of people is. And they're the ones that say, yes, this is an acceptable use of this money to speed up those like middle ground items.
But either are required to be a function of a request for proposals.
I was gonna say, is that
This
is
would
that
just-
ours to do, or is that like the treasurer's department? If we give them an amount, then do they make the policy, the ordinance from there?
I think if we wrote something in, we would force the city to have something to act as that middle ground for
Just like-
adjustments in dollar amounts.
Just like we have, instruct the commission to adopt rules, isn't that the same thing? Like the charter can instruct them to adopt an ordinance that fits that.
Well, that's why I need to understand better what the treasurer's role is
Right.
in this.
Well, it
But,
could be, we don't spell out any dollar amount here and say that the commission on an annual basis has to go and determine what that dollar value is
Oh.
every year.
Oh,
That's a really good idea.
And then they're the
And work
governing
with the
body that
treasurer to
dictates it. They can
establish.
adjust as needed.
I kinda like that.
And, I mean,
They'll
it
hate
still
it.
falls on the commission, and if they want less work at individual meetings, they can raise that dollar
The
amount.
thing is, then a commission would really have the capacity to need, like, I'm not saying we'll ever have this, but if you had a whole panel of commissioners who were very, very against use of public funds on principle for some reason, they in theory could cut everything off at the knees and make it so there are no resources for city.
the
ser-
opposite.
Or
To be completely irresponsible.
Yeah.
But the city voted them in,
Is this
so
something, is this a
that's the
proposal
decision of the city as a whole.
that you're putting forward because you think that it's more efficient and beneficial to the city? Or is it something you're proposing because you think that it makes it easier to convince the taxpayers without like listing a dollar amount? Or is there some other reason why you think that this is a good idea?
I think that we as a group would probably all say that we are not the right people to be making the decision as to what the city can spend with fewer checks and balances than having to go to the city commission.
Maybe it's our responsibility through listening to people to develop a sense
But
of
we're
it.
not getting community input at our meetings at this point, and we might get feedback later on. So it's, our personal opinion compared to the city's wants of, 50,000. I think originally it was proposed, from city staff to go with 25,000. Well, that's now been doubled, and we weren't comfortable with 25,000, which is why we went to the 12.5. So we're on very opposite ends of the spectrum.
I'm just saying, yeah, I think putting a dollar amount on this is a real slippery eel. Because it may not, I'm looking at the city manager shall be responsible for city purchasing in a manner consistent with city ordinances. Your idea is intriguing me.
I mean, if the
In
city
terms of having,
ordinance
like,
dictates-
setting the higher cap for the having to take it to the commission, but for lesser amounts, somehow building it into the city manager's purchasing responsibilities. A decision about that. Let's think on that one.
Because
can play
the
with that, 'cause
benefit
I
of
like
that is
that
it would last forever, right? Like you wouldn't need to continually adjust for inflation. But I think you would need to put in some guardrails to protect against somebody just completely
Just
underfunding basic
Yeah.
public services. Whether or not you see that as our responsibility or not, I don't want to be responsible for it, is my answer. So.
Responsibility either direction.
I don't think that city commissioners, like, on the whole, are any better we are making this decision, like they're just city residents, like some of them might be qualified and some of them might not be, like they're just
We have
elected.
access readily.
I was
access to
elected.
the budget, right?
And they're making decisions on everything else for the city, and they're the ones that are refusing or allowing these purchases anyway. So it should be
They
more
approve the
up to
budget.
them and like the city manager to say, okay, we don't need to see things, we trust the city to make this decision, it doesn't need to come to us. And if it's over this limit, we do still need to be able to provide that feedback.
You could ask them to set an amount, but they have to set an amount and maybe you set limits for what that amount is? Or under or something?
Well, I don't know if determining that amount could be informed by the CIP process when they can see in a given year or a given 2 or 3 years what is likely to be coming down the pike. It's a possibility. On that.
And I do hope
we
they're
need a
more
whole other
qualified than me in making those decisions.
Yeah, well, if we're gonna have, if we have a whole other meeting on this, I
The
would like
city
for the,
commissioners?
I would like for the
Yeah.
treasurer to be here and maybe some of the department heads.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't hope they are, I would say I don't think they are.
I do think they are then, that's what I'll say. I do think they are more qualified than me in making those decisions.
Really?
Yes. 100% I think that.
I mean, because they're commissioners or because you're thinking specifically of the commissioners that we have right now?
I'm thinking of the commissioners we have right now.
That's what we're responsible for thinking of though, is the commissioners we might have.
See what you're saying?
moving forward. And
That's
there
what I'm
might-
saying, like, they're just elected people, they're just residents of Big Rapids. Like, if you sit on the commission for 10 years, and like, or however long the maximum term is, by the end of that, you might be more qualified than we are right now. But if you just joined the commission today,
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
7 or 9 of us,
Let me,
and
bring us back to the resolution so we can
Oh,
get
yeah,
this
yeah, let's
passed.
do it.
No, I agree, this is, this conversation is way more complicated than I was anticipating, and I do think, we can be thinking about, we can have a special meeting
You said
between
it
now
wasn't
and
sexy.
February 12th, which I would strongly recommend if we're gonna do something about, because that we could just focus on this. And I would, if we do that, I would like to invite the city treasurer to come talk with us and possibly some of these department heads, Steve Schroeder, Danny Haynes, or whoever, from public safety. It would be good to hear from them directly. Okay, but right now, may I have a roll call? Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion. I need a motion.
Motion to approve resolution approving Charter Revision Commission's request for budget with the amendment of changing it from
Want me to read what I wrote?
yeah.
This is okay? I have, whereas the Big Rapids Charter Revision Commission has nearly completed their first review of the charter of the city of Big Rapids, and I just put nearly in there and took out all 19 chapters. Is that okay?
That works for me. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Brown.
Yes.
Cochran.
Yes.
Hoganson. Knopfschneider.
Yes.
Metz.
Yes.
Neal. Yes. Maholka.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Do we want to tackle 16, 17, and, we've only got 5 minutes. These are not very meaty. So, we gauge your interest, would you prefer to push this off until the February meeting? Start fresh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was just one section, I'd say let's kick it, but
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to do that and do the budget, or are you going to do a special meeting for the budget?
If we're gonna do a special meeting for the budget, we need to pick a date, and I think we need to advertise it, not like 18
I have to have 18 hours.
hours ahead of time, okay. You wanna take a look at your calendars if you would?
I'd like to do it sooner rather than later.
I was gonna say it's
Still
fresh.
in our mind. You wanna, keep it on a Wednesday night, or?
This can do next week.
Let's see, where are we? We're at the 8th, right? Okay, what do people's schedules look like? 22nd?
I can do the 22nd.
Wednesday the 22nd?
I can make it work.
2 weeks.
Should be
Yeah,
able
it's
to.
2 weeks.
Get a reminder.
At the moment, I know.
Sounds good, Rain.
That's the kind of thing I will.
Is anything else scheduled in the building, in this room at that? It's not a planning commission, is it?
I don't have the commission
Commission should
calendar.
be the 15th. The planning commission's third Wednesday, right? Of the month, so that would
Pull the
be.
calendar, but I don't have the full, I just have my city calendar.
I'm calling it a special meeting.
On the website.
Yes. Yeah, you can access it easily.
Okay. Karen, if you would, we're gonna shoot for same time, 5:30?
Yes.
5:30 on Wednesday, the 22nd, for a special meeting to discuss purchasing issue and budget.
Okay, so you'd like the treasurer,
Yes.
and do you want me to ask Steve Schroeder?
Possible, if he's available.
Heather again?
If she's available, yeah.
Police chief or?
Yeah, some of the, you have a deputy chief now, yes?
We do, Scott Paquette.
Scott.
Could you ask them to look at 810 and 811 and see how they would word it to make it work for them? Work for them the best.
Yeah.
We wanna ask them not to show up until like 6:30 so that we can actually like have time to discuss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have our own ideas to present to them instead of like, I don't like the idea of asking them and having a discussion with them.
For them, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and like if they bring really great ideas that we want to adopt, we can throw out our own ideas, but I'd rather have something.
That they give us the information and then we have it discussed before and then we'll discuss what they give us after as well.
Yeah.
Such a little on the paper, like,
I know, that
why,
takes up so much
why?
space.
I know, it's so important.
I know.
Okay, and could we trouble you to send out a reminder notice to everybody, since this is an off-schedule meeting?
Do you want me to send reminder notices anyway?
I think you do.
I really don't, I mean, I just send the packet and stuff, but
The packets.
I feel like
kind of your reminder, but,
like the
Reminder.
reminder.
I know, but, okay, just wanna make sure.
In the meantime, if you have suggestions for wording, write them down, bring them to share. And we will know, the city commission meeting is Tuesday, the 21st, because of, they're not meeting on Monday because of Martin Luther King Day. So hopefully we'll have our answers as far as our approval of our budget amendment by then. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
The night before. So we're gonna move 15 to 18 to 20, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Did you just say?
I said, so we'll move those chapters to February, and we're good to go.
We are ready to go, and meeting adjourned.
Yay!
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
this one made my head hurt.
You don't prefer numbers, do you?
I love numbers.
It's not
I
the-
love them to make sense.
When
I
you
love the
start-
verbiage to make sense and none of what we have right now.
Yeah.
You said this
start,
wasn't
like,
gonna be
trying to put all the
exciting or
pieces together,
sexy,
who all the
and I
players
think
are.
this is one of the more sexy and exciting meetings we've
Mon-
had.
Money stuff is like, makes sense to me, but then when it's written in a way that doesn't make sense, then I wanna
Yeah.
stop.
Do you think that if we got the charter, some nice lingerie?
I think some nice lingerie would go a long way toward making me more
We could get
excited
binder
to
covers.
attend.
I'm thinking that the public would be a lot more interested.
Public certainly would be more
Nice
interested.
lingerie?
We dress this thing up in some stilettos and fishnets.
Pretty colors.
Nice garter or something, like when we print it in the Pioneer to like bind it together.
It was off.
Ace.
Probably not.